and Caicos. Welcome to another episode of Disaster 365 radio show brought to you by the Department of Disaster Management and Emergencies. I'm your host, Alison Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have with us in studio today on Radio Turks and Caicos 89.1 FM, Dr. Holly Hamilton, Director of Meteorology at the Turks and Caicos Islands Airport Authority National Weather Service. Dr. Hamilton, it's good to have you here again.
Good to be back.
Today, we will be talking about rapid intensification of storms, and we want to hear some personal experiences, maybe personal stories from our very own Dr. Hamilton. All right, so we're going to just kick off with the first question. Can you explain to us what is rapid intensification?
Okay, so that's an important question because we're seeing this happen a lot these days. So the definition of rapid intensification is the increase in the maximum sustained winds of a tropical cyclone of at least 30 knots or 35 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. And so that's an important question. Like I said, it's happening more frequently now, and it proves to still be a forecast challenge to figure out when the onset of rapid intensification will occur.
All right, thank you for that. What are the primary factors that contribute to rapid intensification?
So this would be determined on the environment that the hurricane is in. If it's in a favorable environment, warm ocean temperatures, low wind shear, a lot of moisture in the atmosphere that the system can feed off of, there would be a great potential for rapid intensification. But again, like I said earlier, this is still a forecast challenge to know when and if, because it doesn't always happen all the time. Forecasters and meteorologists, we're still trying to figure out and study the signs to know when it could happen. But what you see recently, the National Hurricane Center, they do take better account for the possibility of rapid intensification occurring, because before, it just seemed for a storm to intensify 35 miles per hour or more in 24 hours just seemed, almost impossible. And so that's when you were seeing a lot of these forecasts being, as we say, busted, because you just couldn't imagine that possibility. But like I said, we're seeing this happen more and more often. I mean, we don't have to think back too far. Hurricane Beryl just happened, and we saw a tropical storm develop into essentially a Cat 4. And again, this is in July, and then into a Cat 5. So these systems, we're seeing them rapidly intensify more and more. And it's just key for us as meteorologists to understand what's going on, because we could better prepare the public, for when these situations are happening. So in the messaging, you will see a lot of discussion saying that there's a potential for rapid intensification. And I remember hearing that a lot in terms of Beryl, because the conditions that Beryl was in and moving into, it had the space to rapidly intensify. Right. So just to make sure people are aware and they're not caught off guard, it's just important to put that in the messaging.
All right, thank you. Because that sort of segues into my second question, which is, are there any specific examples of storms that would have rapidly intensified and would have impacted the Turks and Caicos Islands?
In recent times, the three major storms that we would have been impacted by was Hurricane Ike, Hurricane Irma, and Hurricane Fiona. And I went back and looked. Ike and Irma both rapidly intensified. This was while they were still out in the Atlantic. But in 2008, Ike rapidly intensified into a major hurricane. So we saw in the early hours of September 4th, it would have had winds of 80 miles per hour. And within 24 hours, that increased to 135 miles per hour. So that's a Cat 1 to a Cat 4 system. And in their forecast, they were projecting that Ike would have impacted the TCI maybe as a Cat 2 or Cat 3. So when you see that significant increase in the intensity, a Cat 4 is significantly more dangerous than a Cat 1. So you have to prepare accordingly. And then Irma again. So that happened between the third and the fourth. And then Ike impacted TCI on the 6th. And then Irma in 2017, we saw the winds increase from 120 miles per hour to 185 miles per hour. So that's well above the 35 mile per hour parameter. And Irma was the strongest hurricane ever observed in the open Atlantic Ocean. So that's a strong Cat 5. And that it was one of only 5 hurricanes with measured winds of 185 miles per hour or higher in the entire Atlantic basin. So that was a record-breaking storm, which we were impacted by.
Right.
So, and then Fiona didn't quite classify as rapidly intensifying, but we did see a significant increase in its winds, and that was again before it impacted the TCI.
Right.
So we've had our experiences when it comes to rapidly intensifying systems. With Ike and Irma, it would have happened well ahead of impact time so that we could have prepared accordingly. But like, again, we look at Beryl, that rapidly intensified pretty soon before it impacted the Eastern Caribbean. Sometimes you don't have a significant lead time.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And that's a point I really want to stress to our listeners, that we no longer have this time that we think we would normally have to be prepared. And so we need to make sure that we are constantly prepared so that anything can happen. If systems are intensified rapidly, we will not be caught off guard. So I just really want to appeal to our listeners: take this hurricane season preparations seriously and be ready at all times. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton. We want to shift gears a little bit, and we want to talk about maybe your personal journey. How long have you been in this field, and can you share a memorable experience from your career related to hurricane forecasting?
Okay, so taking into account my educational journey, I guess, that would have started back in 2005 after I graduated from sixth form college at British West Indies Collegiate. I went straight off to the UK, attended the University of Leeds to pursue a bachelor's in meteorology and atmospheric science. So that was a 3-year degree course. I graduated with first class honors in 2008, and I felt like I still wanted to pursue more. So I went to grad school at Penn State University, and I pursued a master's and doctorate in meteorology and atmospheric science. I graduated with my doctorate in 2016, and then I decided to stay on at Penn State for 2 more years, and I worked as a postdoctoral scholar. So basically, I was doing research for those 2 years. Then I took a bit of a break in terms of my personal life. I got married. I wanted to start my family. And then I got a call and was offered the opportunity to return home to be the director of meteorology. So I moved down in 2021, but I forgot. Prior to that, I did a specialized course at the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology to become certified as an operational aeronautical forecaster. And after that course, I worked 2 months at the Bahamas Department of Meteorology as a forecaster. So people probably are familiar with the various forecasts that come from Bahamas Met, the public, the marine, and then they also do the aerodrome forecast for the Turks and Caicos. So I would have, for 2 months, written some of those forecast products for the Bahamas. And then they, like I said, they write TAFs for the Turks and Caicos Islands, and I would have written those. And that was a great experience. And then in 2021, I started as the Director of Meteorology here at the Turks and Caicos Islands Airports Authority. So for the memorable experience, my first love was hurricanes. That's what got me into meteorology. You know, watching the Weather Channel and seeing those meteorologists talk about tropical cyclones and forecasting where they were going to go and how they were going to impact certain countries and so forth. So for me, shortly after starting in 2021 and 2022, we had Hurricane Fiona. And that was the experience where I guess I call it my baptism of fire, my first rodeo, where, I had to now speak to the country, speak to the decision makers. I sat in with the NEOC and provided forecasts and insight on how the storm could impact us and so forth. And it was like a dream come true. Like, that was why I got into the field, because, when I was 11, 12, I realized the gap. I was interested and passionate about it, but I also noticed the gap. And I wanted to pursue meteorology with the intent that I would come back home to serve my country in that capacity. So it was a memorable experience for me to be able to act in that role. And basically, I remember, I think it was maybe the day or two before Impact, when, as you would remember, you were there in the NEOC and we were going to have a press conference, and they basically said, okay, let's put Dr. Hamilton in front of the screens and speak to the people. And I felt like the meteorologist that I admired so much on the Weather Channel, So I love what I do. It comes with its challenges, but at the end of the day, and I speak for all meteorologists, we love our job and we do it as best as we can, because at the end of the day, it's about protecting people and their lives and property.
I must congratulate you on your achievements. Really, really good. I'm happy to know that you really decided to come back and serve your country. I think TCI is blessed to have you as, a daughter of the soil, and just doing what you do with such passion. And then it really now leads me to ask you, what really motivates you and keep you going as a meteorologist during the hurricane season? What keeps you going?
Well, like I said, it's about serving my country. I just remember, like I said, growing up, people would say, oh, we need our own Met service. We need this. We need to have people to provide this information for the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I really took that to heart when I was pursuing my degrees, especially at grad school. That was the fuel. It was challenging at times, but I kind of carried my country on my back, essentially. I was doing it for Turks and Caicos, and I wanted to be prepared as best as possible to come back and fit in any role and fit in the capacity and serve my country well. So that's what motivates me. Hurricane season, it's a challenging time of the year, because at this time, the meteorologists are the hot commodity. Everybody wants to hear from the meteorologist. I mean, anybody sees me on the street, they're like, are we okay this hurricane season, or what's going on this hurricane season? But, like I said, I love what I do, and hurricanes were always my passion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton. And I must say, on behalf of Team DDME, working with you is indeed a pleasure. The synergy is there. You provide that support. At least, we really appreciate the partnership, and we just pray that it will continue to grow. All right. So any final words you want to leave with our listeners? Any final advice? Anything?
Like we always say, prepare, prepare, prepare. We can't say it enough. Because the better you're prepared earlier in the season, if something is to pop up, you don't have to have the massive rush to the stores or so forth. And if you have your plan in place, you're not stressing out about what you're going to do. These are the things you think about now before you have a system coming our way. So just be prepared, and we know all that we need to do in terms of getting our non-perishable foods, having our plan, making sure our insurance is in place, businesses having their continuity plans, and then again, just being tuned in, knowing where you can get information. Again, we're on social media, DDME and Turks and Caicos Islands National Weather Service. Again, unrelated to hurricanes, we also put out a public weather forecast, and all of that comes out on our social media platforms, and you can also hear it on Radio Turks and Caicos. So, yeah, just be prepared and be safe.
Dr. Hamilton, it has been such a pleasure just having this conversation with you, having you on our program. It has been our esteemed pleasure. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Disaster 365 here on Radio Turks and Caicos 89.1 FM. Remember, staying informed is key to preparation. Join us next week as we continue the conversation with another very interesting guest. Stay safe and be prepared.